Hi there, my name is Dalfridge, and this is my review for Medal of Honor. Medal of Honor is the latest instalment in this 11-year-old franchise and the first to be set in the modern world. You follow the story of a small group of soldiers as they fight against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and you spend most of the game playing as Rabbit, but occasionally you switch to playing as either Deuce or Hawk. The game opens with your squad on their way to meeting an informant who has information about a potential Al-Qaeda attack. Unsurprisingly, it isn't that simple. You get ambushed by Chechens and you have to fight your way through to the informant before foiling the enemy's plans. The plot might be sounding fairly familiar, like if you've ever seen a war movie or played any other war video games, but it's written well enough that it doesn't matter. The opening sequence where you drive up in a small convoy to meet the informant is very atmospheric. It feels like you're about to be ambushed at any second, but you're unsure of when or where it is coming from until it hits. I know that's what an ambush is, but often in video games you can see the checkpoint of where it's about to happen. The story manages to keep up this tension and atmosphere for the most part, although it does fall off a little towards the end when I lost track of why I was shooting these people.
Sir, we are in and operational.
Colonel, we've been going over your battle plan and we're a little concerned.
What is it that concerns you?
Boys in Langley tell me that between 100 and 350 Al-Qaeda are preparing to bring the fight to us, not to mention the probability of high-value targets moving through the area. Now, if they make it into Pakistan, our hands are tied.
Those numbers are incorrect, sir. Our intel shows the resistance is much higher, possibly more than 1,000.
Well, if that's the situation, it's even more vital to move now. We want boots on the ground in 24 hours.
We have Tier 1 AFO teams inserting into the valley now, sir.
The gameplay itself is fairly rigidly scripted. While this isn't bad in of itself, it can lead to the story chugging on at times. I have no issue with scripted events in this kind of game. You only have to look at Condemned to see how well these can be put in to immerse you in the action. The only problem is the scripting in this game ranges from perfect to the more often clunky to the occasionally completely broken. For example, in one section you turn a corner only to instantly be knocked down by a hidden enemy, leading to your squad mates having to save you. This works really well as you can't see the enemy coming and it gives you a real sense of being jumped upon in a combat situation. On the other hand, you have moments like where you count 6 enemies around a fire, only for a 7th to pop up, run towards the fire and set off a signal to alert the other nearby units to your presence. No matter what you do, you cannot stop this guy, to the point that if you shoot him, the bullets just go right through until after his animation is complete. While I have no issue with the actual event of signalling other bad guys, I feel this way of doing it is incredibly lazy. As well as these scripting issues, I also have an issue with the hit detection in Medal of Honor. Countless times I would aim a shot perfectly at someone, only for it to pass right through or hit some kind of invisible barrier. This isn't the kind of thing I expect from a AAA title. On top of this, the controls were fairly clunky as well. Even after playing with the sensitivity, it still felt like I was trying to turn around in treacle. There were some nice touches to the controls though. The ability to go from sprinting into a crouch via a slide was a great inclusion and came in really handy when trying to get into or between cover. Also, given the choice of 2 main weapons and double tapping Y to get to the pistol was a nice change from pressing a button to cycle through many weapons or holding a button for a radial menu. On saying this, the weapon management system in this game is a little strange. Instead of the normal style of picking up whatever you find on the floor, your squad mates are able to replenish your ammo at any point for the weapons you start the level with. While this does work fairly well, it does mean there's little variation in what weapons you use, and seeing as your pistol has unlimited ammo anyway, it isn't like you're ever in danger of running out. I also find myself trying to reload several times, only to be told, "You have enough ammo already." I know full well I have enough ammo, I wasn't asking you for any, I just thought guns work better with the ammo in them rather than my pockets. While I'm sure this concept of having an ammo stash is more realistic than picking the enemy's guns up off the floor every time you run out of your current ones, this is just one example of where the realistic nature of Medal of Honor gets in the way. This happens fairly often throughout the game, the worst culprit being the use of military speak. I understand that obviously soldiers will use military speak when talking to each other, that is its exact purpose. However, this isn't just soldiers talking, they're soldiers talking in a video game, most of the players of which won't be in the military. There were numerous occasions where I was asked to do something and I had no idea what they said to me. This doesn't get in the way of the gameplay too much, as you do just look for the objective marker and kill whoever's nearest to it, but instead of adding to the immersion, it just alienates the player somewhat.
I did, Colonel. We don't leave without our guys. Infantry showed no activity on that ridge. We're setting down 1,300 meters northwest of plan. What about the bird? You'll get your bird, but we won't be on it.
The AI is fairly erratic. This is one of the very few games I've played where it felt like the AI teammates were actually contributing to the action. However, at the same time, they love to take the piece of cover nearest you, stand right in your way, and on occasion just watch an enemy shooting you when both of you are right in front of them. The enemy AI is similar as well. They do tend to aim quite evenly at you and other team members for the most part, but again they have issues. For example, staying behind a rock forever, not even poking their heads out, or just popping up out of nowhere after teammates have cleared a room. To break up what would be fairly monotonous gameplay, Medal of Honor has a lot of different types of sections where you get to do something different. For example, there's a short section where you have to defend a position using various types of ordnance and artillery. It starts you off with just strafing runs, but moves you on to guided missiles, large bombs and airstrikes for you to use. I often find this kind of defend the base part of games irritating and a little too hard. However, in this instance it was actually quite good fun, and the controls handled the difference in gameplay well. In contrast to this, there are the driving parts. You spend a part of one level having to drive between bases on an ATV, and the controls are horrendous. I haven't played a game where you let go of the gas to come to an instant stop since 1992, and I haven't missed them one bit. It took me a long time to get the hang of the driving, and by the time I did, it was pretty much over. Thankfully, this is only a very short part of the game, and you can't really fail it. Thankfully, the next time you get into a vehicle, you adjust the gunner, but even this has its issues. You're put into the gunner seat of a helicopter while it circles an Al Qaeda base in the mountains. At one point I was getting consistently game overed and I have no idea why. When I did eventually get past the point, I was doing the exact same thing I had on previous attempts. Maybe I just had the right attitude this time or something. This being an FPS game in a modern setting, we almost have to have the stealth and sniping sections as well. The stealth was surprisingly well put together considering my previous complaints about the AI. Your teammate watches over the scene while you run around being a silent douchebag, and there aren't any real moments of bullshit like you often get. The only complaint I do have about this is that early on, if you mess up, then 5 people with perfect aim come and fill you with so much lead they could plumb their entire village. The sniping sections are the one area that I'm undecided on. On the one hand, I had a real issue with the first one in that it seemed to take a full second for my trigger presses to register. To be clear, I'm not talking about bullet flight time, that's one of the reasons I liked the sniping sections. I mean that when I pressed the trigger on my controller, there seemed to be a significant delay before the trigger was pulled in-game. However, by the time I got to the second round of Sniper Wolf, this seemed to have been fixed. The second time it is also a lot better. You have a spotter who calls out where people are, and he directs you to the enemy patrols and other snipers. It would have been nice if he had told me I could use thermal vision to see people at the very start though, rather than after the 2 game overs.
Grid 201889, LZ is ice, no visual on enemy.
Roger, Prowler 3. Proceed.
Shouldn't we be at Gardez by now?
We passed Gardez 20 minutes ago!
We have SEALs in contact! MIA! Watch your fires!
15 seconds!
Go to red!
On the whole, the campaign was enjoyable, however my one real bugbear with it was that it was just far too short. I managed to finish the campaign in under 4 hours. I'm not really very good at first person shooters, and I'm certainly not a quick player. Also, consider that the 4 hours isn't 4 hours of gameplay, it is 4 hours including loading screens, cutscenes and menus. This shortness of the campaign, coupled with the kind of bugs that cropped up, just make me feel that this was really a rushed game. Almost as if the most important thing to the publisher was to get this game on the shelves before certain Dark Surgery games were released. If they just spent a little bit longer polishing this game off, then it could have been a strong contender for Game of the Year.
Tell you to send in the ground pounders. What's happening with those infantry units?
I'm waiting on birds to send in those troops, sir. We won't have the last of them till 0800 hours.
And what until then?
We're inserting the Afghans into the fight right now, sir. We're calling them Task Force Rebel.
Well, we appreciate the Afghans' desire to contribute, but you have 2 battalions of men ready to bring the hurt. Let's get them into the fight.
Sir, the ANA are very capable. They know the terrain.
The enemy's C2 locations, and TF Rebels being led by our Special Forces' best NCOs.
Roger that. But when can we get the rest of our boys in there?
Once the
Chinooks are fueled and loaded, we'll be ready to go, sir.
Now, we couldn't review Medal of Honor without mentioning the multiplayer, could we? After all, the back of the box tells us it has multiplayer developed by the creators of Battlefield. I don't have a lot to say for the multiplayer really. I can't give a fair opinion on it as I'm bad at FPS games and my internet isn't good enough for such things. I did give it a try and it seemed enjoyable. My only real issue with it was that it was so different to the single player to the point that it felt like a completely different game. The simplest example of this is in the single player you can go prone and you have the slide move I mentioned earlier. Neither of these are present in the multiplayer, the controls are exactly the same as in Bad Company 2. On saying that, the rest of the gameplay seems to be more modelled on Call of Duty, with smaller maps and at a faster pace than Bad Company 2. On its own merit, Medal of Honor isn't a bad game by any means. The real problem is that because it's been so clearly marketed as being a Modern Warfare 2 killer, it opens itself up to comparison too easily. If they spent a little more time working on the game, rather than telling us how much better than Call of Duty it is, we would have seen for ourselves how much better it is rather than feeling like we've been left with a game just to tide us over until November the 9th.